evening and welcome to our Monday, September 19, 2022 voting meeting of the Exeter Township Board of School Directors. Please note that the board met for an executive session on September 8th, 2022 and this evening prior to this meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Fite, can you please take roll call?
Dr. Ann Herring.
Present.
John Fiddler.
Here.
Dr. Andrea Battler.
Here.
Dr. David Hemberger.
Here.
Jason Mell.
Here.
Timothy Morgan.
Here.
Robert Quinter. Julia Schaefer.
Here.
Allison Wilson.
Here.
All present.
Thank you, Mr. Fike. In addition to the 9 board members in attendance this evening, we're also joined at the board table by our solicitor, Sharon Montaigne, and members of the school district administration, including Dr. Christy Haller, superintendent, Dr. Eric Flam, director of teaching and learning, Mrs. Dawn Harris, director of pupil services, Mrs. Diane Skornavaki, director of human resources, and Mr. Brian Fike, who serves as our business administrator as well as our board secretary. Next on the agenda is a presentation. Okay, an update by Director of Operations Stephen Biggerstaff on the FMX system.
Requested by Mr. Morgan at the last meeting. I wanted to come back and speak to you a little bit about where we stand currently with our FMX system. The implementation after board approval, I believe it was April or March or April of this year. Kind of give an update on where we are with the system and some of the features of the system. I did print out a work summary dashboard for the board members and left it on the desks in front of you. This is information that is held, that has people's names on it that work within the department, and I didn't want to share that publicly. But it gives you an overview of sort of how we're doing. It's a snapshot from September 1st through September 16th of this month. It shows you how many work orders were created at that time in the maintenance and custodial and grounds department. On the last few pages, it will show you a brief overview of the type of requests that were put in. The first page is just a basic look at what's due, what's overdue, what's completed in that handout. It shows that during that 2-week period we had 44 work orders that came into the system, and that number will grow substantially as we implement it full across the board. There was an email sent out to staff earlier today about the switch over from Incident IQ to FMX for maintenance and reservations. In that there was some confusion. Some people were still using the Incident IQ system. So I don't think we fully captured exactly how many work orders would be created in that 2-week time. But it does give you a snapshot. I did go back and take some of the ones out of Incident IQ and stick them into the new work order system, but not fully. We're kind of going on the fly. But we're about 90% there for maintenance. It also shows you on the second page, or the back page, who's resolving what, how many work orders each individual is working on, in a basically a pie graph. It tells you what kind of calls they are, whether they're carpentry call, custodial, door operation, a door lock, furniture moving. It encompasses everything from moving furniture to grounds work outside the buildings, custodial work inside the buildings, and these would be special requests that are up and above the normal maintenance cycle for custodial and grounds, cutting grass, removing snow, those operations. It also gives you a way to break out labor hours, efficiency of the average response times. It gives you also how many requests total come into the scene, how long it's taking us to do the job functions for which we are. Most of the time, and the men are told this when they get their work orders in the morning, to include the travel time, building to building as they do their work. do not include times for breaks, lunches, all those etc. things, the normal processes throughout the day. I think it's on the fourth page. It gives a further breakdown where you can zero in on the productivity and to see what kind of calls, so we can better plan the processes for maintenance. And that's the edge of doing this. Over time, we can look at where we're allocating money within the district and then realize where our strengths and weaknesses are. If we're easily able to handle a small plumbing leak, or maybe there's something more with the fact that we need water parts for something, or in the future, if we want to look and say, well, we've spent $10,000 in the last year to maintain a certain part of the roof, maybe it's time we look at spending money to replace that section of the roof. So it helps you give a view of maintenance overall and how we can improve the services and how we respond to them, and absorb costs, and also watch, cost allocations, where we're spending the money at any given time. Part of this job is to just make sure that the money that we're given, the money that we're budgeting, we're staying within that budget, and we're operating within the needs of the district, the most important things at the most important times. That does evolve, and it also changes depending on the season. In the wintertime, you're more in the snow removal. You're less into doing other things or other processes that we do during the summer. But I think it's a great system. It gives me the opportunity to see from a maintenance aspect exactly how our planning, the process for which we do, what we're utilizing, and as far as the equipment we have, tools. It can go much further. In the future, we could adapt it and put inventory controls in place. If we find identified vendors, the system itself will generate QR codes and we can actually hang on the shelf. So if we know that we're changing the filter of an HVAC unit twice a year, or 3 times a year, or 4 times a year, depending on the hours that you run, the things that we need to do with the unit, we can calculate those costs and order more effectively, reducing overhead, reducing stores within the building, getting more to a just-in-time inventory or an on-demand inventory, so we're not built up with 6 million bulk filters in one purchase that may not be necessary or may not be used. So it's all about cost control, and I didn't want to put that out here because, like I said, there's people's information on there on who's doing what by name, and I didn't find that would be appropriate for the workers to have that out. The other aspect of FMX, and the reason we chose this, and I suggested it, was the Reservation Fund, which I can display. When you look on the screen, you'll see that it gives you an opportunity to look. This is what's upcoming. You can look at it in this aspect, where the event is at, even if it's off-site, which field is located at in the school district, the timing, the organizer. When you click on this, you can open it up and see it's in the stadium. It's Saturday, September 24th from 1 to 3. It's girls varsity Hamburg is who they're playing. You'll be able to see all the details for the event. And this also helps a great deal with planning for our custodial and grounds people with what we need to do to provide coverage for those areas. This system will also incorporate community events. So our outside community groups, whether it be a Cub Scout group, church group, the lower league for the younger kids, baseballs, footballs, basketballs, whatnot, there's always a problem where there's conflict because one group will want one field at one time. This system will also prevent that. Before we got this system, we were using a paperwork system. It's not fully implemented yet. I'd say it's about 50%. Most of the struggle you have is just getting people to register online. Changing the system up, throws everybody off a little bit. But the great thing about it is you can go in here to the calendar, and it'll show you on here everything that's happening. When I'm looking at it, I'm looking at every building. So, I'll see everything from the junior high, or Lawton, whatever's upcoming for each group. They have to submit liability insurances. They also have to register, and you have contact information in there. So it makes it a lot easier when you're trying to organize these events to make sure that folks know that they can contact someone. My information is in this computer. Direct to gas information is in this computer. So it's on the program. I designed that little Exeter Eagles landing thing up there. Put that in there. This system is really great. When we get it up and running fully, you'll be able to look months ahead. Will cause less confusion. Obviously, one of the concerns with the paperwork system was making sure that we get invoicing correct for groups. We don't want to overcharge groups when they do pay to utilize our spaces. It's not a lot of money that we charge outside people to use them, but that money does go back into the schools. So we want to make sure that we're billing properly and we're not upsetting people, and that has been an issue in the past. So this will help resolve that, as we'll have one person doing invoicing within the district and the district administration. And then as the approvals go, so if I wanted to put a schedule request in today, and I would say new request, this is like, there's different ways you can put requests in. Community events, private events. Schedule Star is what we use with other schools to plan our athletics competitions across the board. But you can have school events, staff events. They're away, home. You can really look at this from a lot of aspects. So it makes life a lot easier when you're trying to figure out what's going on, what's required in the event. So if I was going to put it for like a private event, I'd have to give the event a name, choose the building I want to go to. Let's say I want to have it in Watt. And then it'll ask me what areas or spaces are available in Watt for outside people to use as a community event. And really, we only offer two there, which is the cafe and gymnasium. We do offer other spaces, but they have not yet been approved to be put in there. So if I wanted to use the cafe, I would say my event is going to be on the 23rd. It's from 8 to 9 p.m. It doesn't ever repeat. I would have to give the number of attendees. Say it's 5. If I had any additional needs, a podium, a screen, extension cord, whatever I need, I can put it in there. I can put in here any other special need that I need to put in there. And then right here, I would have to submit liability insurance. And that's basically just downloading a PDF file into to the thing that shows the current insurances, just so that the person who's invoicing can look over and make sure that the insurances are up to date. And then it would generate a reminder, and then I would submit it. Once it's submitted into the system, that approval process goes through the building principal, and it goes through the athletics director to make sure that there's no conflicts. But the system will automatically identify a conflict and will tell you that space is not available at that time, and it gives you a way to contact either the building principal or Mr. McGath, and they can work out another time or maybe another location now. So it's really great. And then once that's generated, it'll appear on the calendar, and then you can see it. It's a really great system. I think we made the right decision in moving forward because it saves a lot of time and paperwork. I mean, I could show you, I have a stack of papers, and we had almost 1,800 events just in the 7-8 months that I was here last year. Being able to track that here, and you can do it by building. If I wanted to locate it down to just a building, and a community member can only see the building accessibility for the building that they're in, that they're requiring space for in that time frame. So only the administrators and the higher ups can see the events that are going on at their building, and the district as a whole to provide security. So it limits down how much can get out there. So I hope if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. But that's pretty much where we are and how it's going.
When are we going to roll this out to community groups?
Very soon. I would say by the 1st of October or sooner, they'll be able to register that way. We already took reservations on paper as we would normally every year. And they'll just receive an email basically saying, hey, please resubmit your reservation at this time. So from October on, it should be pretty much 100%.
Okay, and they'll be able to access that from our website?
That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Biggerstaff, thank you for all your work and for the update.
Yes.
What is your team's feedback been? Going with the work orders through the digital system and their ability to identify that. You had talked in our first presentation that it might help them to prioritize if there were several things in one building as opposed to driving all over campus in different directions. So just curious to know, how do they feel that the system's working?
They like it, and I'm not overstating it. They do like it. It makes their life a lot easier. They're able to plan in the morning when they come in what they have to tackle that day. So just like you said, if we know we have multiple repairs in one building, or we have one man who's going to a building to change filters, he can grab whatever he needs from our stock and then not have to return here for several hours, which allows them to have the day where they don't have to run the Lowe's, or they don't have to run back to the admin building, or back to the senior high to go with the lead to get out and make the repairs. Also, this is available on your phone. There's an app for it. You can also download the link and look at it that way. So it works out very easy for me and very easy for them. Once they complete it, the process is it goes to either Mr. Pazuli or myself. We close out the work order. They'll put the time in that they were on that individual job. In the future, if we want to, we could build it so it has time limits on a particular job, like how long it suggested time may take to do a particular function within that business unit. But yeah, so far it's been terrific. A lot easier to use, a lot easier to navigate. We're rolling it out still to most custodians. There's been some problems and trepidations when you think about the logistics of having almost 50 people and having access to this equipment, to this on their own personal phones. You obviously don't want to force people to put stuff on their personal phones. So we're trying to work with IT to get them some updated computers that they can use. We really don't even need computers. We can use an iPad or a Chromebook. So there's that stumble block, but it's not a big one, and I'm working with Joe Layton to try to get that corrected. So I could foresee us in the future, even processes like mowing grass can be worked in here, and you can actually get a sense and an idea of where the district is spending their money. Moreover, and that leads to more accountability, and allows us to better prepare for our budgets and what we're going to spend in the next years. I think it's a terrific system. I'm very happy with it. I guess I'm kind of biased because that was me who pushed it to bring it in here, but I really do think that we've made a big step here, and I can see already. We're averaging on most days less than 20 work orders open by the close of the day. You have to remember that number includes everything that comes in from 3 o'clock in the afternoon, which we need to work on the next day. It also allows us to prioritize the work. Obviously, if you have an electrical issue or you have a plumbing issue, not heating, not cooling, those take priority over, maybe fixing bolts. So the gentleman can see all that. They can see what's in the queue. They know what's in their work. It allows me to assign them the work directly without having to make a phone call, which saves me time throughout the course of my day, so I can concentrate on other things that I need to do. So I think it's terrific. I think you're going to see a payoff within the first few months. And obviously, I'm hoping that the end game here is that we save money over time. It's not an immediate savings, but hopefully when I look at doing my budget next year, February or March, I can say, with some authority, what I've spent this past year, and what I expect to spend next year, rather than just going, cost over time. So that's my hope.
Thank you. And I think it'd be good as we come into those budget planning times every year to even get an update from you. I think it's always important for the public to know that, people like you are working on these efficiencies to reduce costs, and that's something you do all year long, and to show what that impact is over the year.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve, I just had a quick follow-up question.
Yes, sir.
Is this system at all applicable to contracted workers, or just exclusively for our employees?
We do utilize the service for electrical work, and we do have that person in the work order system. But almost exclusively, most of the other work is done within the district. The only time, obviously, we try to put stuff out of the district and not with the maintenance folks inside is when it rises to a project level or to a level which we just can't handle the technical ability of doing, replacing a boiler, something along those lines. but I would say as much as 85% of what we do is done by the same gentleman every day. So what this system will help with is planning of their time and the costing of that time and the custodial staff. So I mean that's another 35 employees itself, and the ground staff, which is another 6. So I mean you can over time really see what we're spending accurately, and then it also reduces maybe the need to go outside to an outside vendor because we're catching things a lot sooner than we might have in the past. Thank you. Is there any other questions?
How much did this system cost?
I believe we paid under $9,000 for it, and it's a 3-year price. So the cost really is, when you think about what the cost of a new heating system in a building, this is a drop in the bucket. You're going to put in a new chiller system, you're talking millions of dollars. So what I'm hoping this system will do is extend the life of that large equipment. And by means of the fact that you can tell that it's been maintained. Hey, we've done filters, we've greased the bearings, we've changed the belts, we've taken care of the unit, we did balancing, whatever it needed. So when we make those expenditures, it's a lot less frequent and it's much more predictable when we need to spend it.
Did we not track it?
When you look at the printout that I gave you, this is much more in depth than what we had before. It's a system that I've used before, a different type of system, but along the same lines. But it does. It does. It's a lot better than what we had previously. Not that the other system wasn't capable of doing it, but the other system didn't have the reservation part of it and the schedule and calendar section. So I figured since we're moving into it, this gives us a chance to get a newer system with more ability to expand in the future. One thing I didn't show you, and I should have, I'm glad you asked that question, is the reporting section here. Yeah.
We had spreadsheets
That's
on
what I
when
thought,
things were
yeah.
expiring. Yes.
Right. When I go into these reporting sections, you'll notice that there's one up there that says team performance, and team usage summary, equipment maintenance summary. I can print out that, or it's at hand at any time. It'll update within 3 to 5 hours after the stuff has been put into it. So it's really live data. So whatever happened the day before, that ended at 3 o'clock or whatever the maintenance, and then ended for the day or the school left, I can view everything that took place that day before. Couldn't do that with Exeter. You couldn't see those sorts of things. So I pretty much know what was done the day before and then where I need to be the next day in order to keep things a lot more on track. But one thing that's unique about maintenance management nowadays is, we have 8 buildings in the district, 1 plus garages is back up. I know there's been discussion of a solar power plant. There's water tower buildings. There's the bus garage. All these things makes your day tough because you're trying to prioritize the work at each building with the same amount of people, and you have people that take time off, and everybody's got lives, stuff outside of the district, things that are going on. So looking at this and being able to plan that a little better also allows me to deal with emergencies and planning it before, basically, and then reducing costs from overtime, any other need we have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other questions? I talked for way too long. I told the
No.
superintendent 15 minutes.
No.
It was 25.
Thank you, Mr. Bickerstaff. Appreciate the information.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move forward to amended agenda. Is there a motion to amend tonight's agenda?
I'd like to make a motion to amend today's agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion.
Yes, Dr. Ring, the purpose of amending today's agenda is to appoint an interim assistant transportation supervisor as a result of an unexpected retirement of Susan Hempel. Position is essential in order to provide uninterrupted transportation service to our students.
Okay. Any discussion regarding that? Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries to amend the agenda as described. Superintendent Report, Dr. Howard.
Thank you, Dr. Herring. First of all, I'd like to recognize that Jacksonville teachers are with us this evening for our board meeting. So there's many familiar faces here. I'd also like to say that I was at Jacksonville this morning and I had an opportunity to visit a number of classrooms. It was very nice to see the smiling faces of students. A lot of students told me that they were at the Holy Fair over the weekend. We exchanged what our favorite milkshake was. So that was fun. So on to my actual report. First of all, I'd like to, the administration is very pleased to bring to the board this evening our candidate for our school safety and security position. As you know, this was a very important position for us to fill with just the right person. We were fortunate that we had a number of great candidates who applied for the position. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Hackman, who is the executive director of the CAU, and her safety and security program administrator, Russell Del Rosario, who assisted in the search. After an extensive interview and presentation process in front of a panel of administrators, board members, and Mr. Del Rosario, we found that we believe is the best candidate to do this position. That person is Eric Sengel. He's actually here with us tonight, not to embarrass you, Eric, but to embarrass you. So Eric is here tonight. We thought that Eric proved that he brought the right blend of law enforcement education and experience, as well as his ability to provide the implementation and administration of security and safety planning experience that we were looking for in a candidate. So we are very much looking forward to working with Eric.
Thank you, Dr. Howard. Okay, we're going to move forward to public comments. Relating to tonight's agenda, in which we will be following board policy number 903 regarding public participation in board meetings. I'd like to emphasize that each statement made by a participant shall be limited to 4 minutes duration. At the 4-minute mark, I would ask that your statement be quickly wrapped up. First commenter would be Mary McSurdy. Hi, Mary. Just state your name and address.
Hi, my name is Mary McSurdy. I live at 1013 Pepper Ridge Drive, Exeter, Farming Ridge. And thank you for the opportunity to speak again to the committee. I gave all of you a copy of a write-up that I had done by a friend of mine, a gentleman by the name of Jack Roach, retired Senior Vice President of Risk Management and Loss Prevention for Bosco's. 30 years experience in this field. I felt that he might be a good person to have take a look at this contract and give me some ideas. So he was nice enough to do that, and what I've given you is a copy of what he wrote. A lot of the items in this handout have already been addressed, but I would like to address basically the first paragraph that he wrote, and that is, I'm going to read from what he said, a 28-year contract where the evolution in energy generation by solar and other means is a tremendous commitment. Exeter will be obligated to pay slightly less than $1 million per year for 28 years. So signing the solar contract is committing the taxpayers of Exeter Township to $28 million over a 28-year period. I understand, I know, that we will get savings in energy costs and SREC credits and things like that. But to look at the spreadsheet, which you can actually read, and blown up a little bit by my commentary, but we're paying a tremendous amount of money, and a lot of my concern is that a lot of the numbers on the spreadsheet are conjectural. They're based on what's today and what's going on. Maybe not what's going on in the future. We don't know that. We don't have a crystal ball. We don't know how much the solar is going to save us. And I think there's a lot of unknowns. And when we're signing a 28-year contract, we don't have a way out. And we've talked about that before, and in the comments, talking to that effect. But that's my notes. As far as I'm going to address some financial issues, some service questions, and then in another minute and a half. Of the $653,000 service contract payment, I'd like to know how much of that is service and how much is the lease, because that is not broken out on the spreadsheet. I'd like to know what the lease rate is, and I think Brian mentioned something about that prior to the meeting. The lease payments are going to commence, I assume, at the time the system becomes operational, which could be up to 18 months, I believe. The cash flow is based on an interest rate as of August 6th. As we all know, interest rates are going up, maybe not for government, but they're going up. So I want to know what the current lease rate is, and I bought my first house in 1980 and I paid 18% interest, and we were in an inflationary period like we are now, so it's not unlikely that interest rates are going to skyrocket. I mentioned this to Brian earlier. The year one service price is $40,000. I don't know what that covers. I'd like that clarified. And I mentioned this before, I think for $40,000 a year, I think you should have a written service plan on your vendor. And I also think you should ask for a tour of your service facility. When I was in sales, our big issue was service. And we invited customers into our service center because we remotely monitor systems, and that was our selling point. So I think you deserve at least a tour of their facility and an on-site explanation. Can I continue further? I can. Okay. So I think you should ask them about that. The service fees over the term of contract are $2.5 million. So I think that's a little bit. Payback is $1.2 million in year 28. It goes up to that. That's year 40. Nobody in here is going to see that. I'm sure not. And I mentioned this before. You need a way out of this contract if you don't like it. And I mentioned before that I think you should add a termination for convenience clause, period, no conditions, end of story. And on section 10.1.3 of the contract states that both parties can enter into this agreement without consulting anybody else. I think, if I'm not incorrect, that you need to go to the planning commission and the township supervisors. So if that's true, that section of the contract should be.
Thank you very much. The next person, Jerry Gelloff. State your name and address.
Jerry Gallup, 106 Michelle Drive. I'm here to talk to you tonight about the solar farm situation. Now, I don't want to ask you not to do it, because I got a feeling it's going to happen. It's just a function of when it's going to happen. So I want to ask you to delay it in order to get we, the taxpayers, a better deal. Because the way I'm looking at this, the folks at Greenworks have done a great job in selling. Okay, they've done a great job. They're sharps. They're great. I don't mean anything bad by that. Okay, very good at their jobs, and they've sold you on this extended deal that goes for 40 years. They have zero risk. We have all the risk. They have everything to gain. We have all the risk. We need to straighten that out a little. It's weighted too hard in our direction. So I would like you to go and talk some more, lay this, get more out of it. From what I can tell, somewhere between $10 and $20 million is going to be spent in this project. That's not profitable yet, but that kind of money can make a serious float for any business. So I'm going to ask you to please consider this, because we don't know what the next 40 years is going to hold. We don't know what the next 40 months is going to hold. We don't know what the next 40 days is going to hold. We can kind of look and see that we have a situation right now where energy is very expensive. And it's not crazy to think that the next president is going to be another drill, baby, drill kind of person. And if the dumping of the strategic petroleum reserves that's happening right now has the effect that many think that it will, which will be to have to be replenished magically shortly after the election, it's going to drive the cost of fuel up again, which would be good for this budget, but it's going to lead to drill, baby, drill. And when that happens, the prices will go through the floor. And if that happens, it will remove the savings from this, and we'll spend millions and millions of dollars to accomplish nothing. So I'm asking you nicely, please delay this thing. Get more out of this. Be the taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gillett. Mary Beth Nardella.
I'm Mary Beth Gardella, 218 Pennsylvania Avenue, and I'm going to repeat some of the things, and I'll just make it kind of quick. I agree with Mary that there is nothing in this contract on what the maintenance entails, and I think that this is something that we should find out. The other thing is we don't know what the cost of upgrading our electrical system is if it's not up to code or can receive the connectivity. It's a very loose contract there. If we sign it, then we're going to find out what the costs are. You're giving us a savings. We're talking about the savings, but we're not talking about what it's actually going to cost the taxpayer every year in taxes. There's no list of software or equipment that is to be installed. We don't know. And there's nothing is mentioned on brownouts. I know they kind of talked about it a little bit, but are we going to have a battery in order to prevent those? So what I'm asking is you tell the community what the tax increase will be for the following two scenarios. One is doing the solar project, because we're still going to be buying electricity. So what is the cost to the taxpayer? Is it going to be 2.5% for the next 10 years? Is it 2%? What is it? So what is the cost to the taxpayer doing the solar project and still buying electricity, as opposed to not doing the solar project and just using the electricity? So I think those things need, and I ask that we delay this project until we have a lot more nailed down in the contract to make it easier for the taxpayer to understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Fred Whitehawk.
Hi, folks. Fred Whitehawk, 200 West 47th Street. Thank you for letting me come. I mentioned this to Jason the other day, and someone had already mentioned it before about the convenience clause. If you don't know what a convenience clause is, any party in the contract can terminate it at any time. If you feel a couple years down the road, you know what, we're not going to see the benefits of this all, you can get out of it. I've done government contracts. In the early 1980s, Northrop Corporation wanted to build the F-20. It was a great jet, great fighter jet. It could be in the air in 4 minutes from cold start. Okay, but for some reason, the Air Force found out that after you fly it, it's a piece of crap. Okay, we sold it some other money, right? They had a convenience clause in that contract. However, the next thing is due diligence. This morning I contacted the planning commission, zoning department. I asked them, could you please tell me if our Exeter Township School Board has submitted a request for the proposed solar panel construction? Because our Exeter Township Planning Commission, or the U.S. Zoning Commission, wrote back consultant
Thank you, Mr. Whitewall. John Heron.
2021, our registration total for the fall, we had 436 kids registered. Spring, 317. 2022, we had fall 497 kids registered, 460 in the spring. It's likely only to increase as years go by. Right now, we are currently using 6 locations for practices and games, and that does not include rotation every year, so we have to do let each field is used very often, let it rest, so that it can regrow grass. It also becomes increasingly difficult to rely on the township to mow their fields. This past weekend, our kids were playing on the field up in Pinelands, and they were like playing in sand. Barely even see the lines of the field. So that being said, I would like to revisit what we're planning to do at Louch with the solar panels. And you can see when you walked in today that we're 2 teams practicing tonight. So it's really just a crucial area for us as a club. And I think, with that many kids registering this night, including summer camps, and summer kick-arounds, so it gets a lot of use, and that's only soccer also. I'm not talking about like the lacrosse uses it also. So I do wish that you would reconsider doing anything with Louch. I do have this on over here. Given the district this size, I feel like we should have some kind of athletic complex. And the location of Louch is such that it's very close to the schools and the fields. And I know Mr. McGaffins expressed interest in having other turf fields. I believe that Louch would be a perfect location for expanded fields, parks, trails. So,
Thank you, Mr. Heron. Brian, did Tom tell you that there's another spot that you would be able to accommodate?
Yes.
You know where?
I think he was told the exterior facility.
Okay. On to board meeting minutes. If there is no objection, we'll adopt a motion to approve meeting minutes.
Yes, as Jimsky did say, that the answer is going to be public comments from
If there's no objection, we'll adopt a motion to approve meeting minutes from last month's school board meetings, August 2nd, 2022 Board Committee of a Whole meeting, and Board Special Voting meeting, as well as August 16, 2022 Board Voting meeting. Hearing no objections, the minutes are approved. Treasurer's report. If there's no objection, we'll adopt a motion to approve the August 2022 Treasurer's report and payment request dated August 17th to September 19th, 2022. Hearing no objections, the Treasurer's report is approved. Education Committee, Mr. Fitt.
Thank you, Dr. Gearing. First item, excuse me, is the enrollment report, which requires no board action. Second item does, it's recommended that the Board of School Directors approve the early graduation request for one student for district policy 2.7.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
The next item is the consent agenda, which mirrors exactly the consent items on the committee of the whole meeting, except for one item, and that is the agreements with New Story. There were two agreements 2 weeks ago on the COW agenda. There was only one agreement for tonight. Just
I don't. I actually don't know why the other agreement's not on here.
okay. Well, I think we can approve this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's not going to.
Nope. No, it will not.
Then set with that. Also on that item is field trip within the 16 piece, which is already approved. So it is recommended the Board of School Directors approve the following education committee items. Shown on the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
And finally, the conference requests, like this new system that shows the new information forward. However, once again, we had 4 conference requests for the committee of the whole meeting, and there are 16 for tonight. I just wonder if someone could explain, is that because they all merged since
Yeah, we were asked years ago to make sure that all conferences are approved prior to people going. So oftentimes we get conferences presented that we are in between. So oftentimes people will try and get the conferences in because when they realize that when the next voting meeting is, that it'll be past their conference time. So in an effort to make sure that it's done in a timely fashion, so the board's not approving it after the fact.
Okay, I don't see any problems with them. I just wanted to get that clarified. So thank you. So the motion is, it is recommended that the Board of School Directors approve the following list of staff conferences. There are 16, and for the explanation is 14, 12 minutes.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Personnel Committee, Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Dr. Herring. It is recommended the Board of School Directors approves or ratifies the following personnel items. Number 1, resignations. It will be A for support staff, guest teachers A, extracurricular A, and B.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
It's recommended that the Board of School Directors approves or ratifies the following personnel items. Number 2, retirements. Administrative staff A and support staff A.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Okay, it is recommended the Board of School Directors approves or ratifies the following personnel items. Number 3, appointments under administrative staff A, under certified staff A, under support staff A through F, support staff substitutes A and B, certified substitutes A through D, guest teachers A, and extracurricular A through C.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Number 4, change of status. It is recommended the Board of School Directors approve the, get myself ahead here. It is recommended the Board of School Directors approves or ratifies the following personnel items. Under change of status, number 4, support staff A, extracurricular A through C, leave of absence under certified staff A and B, and the attached list of course requests.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
It's recommended the Board of School Directors approve ratifies the following personnel items under leaves of absence A and B. Under B, under revised description for the superintendent B. C, approval of the contract of the business manager. And D, approval of the contract for the assistant superintendent of student services.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
And finally, as per our amended agenda, it is recommended the Board of School Directors approve the following personnel items. The appointment of Kaisha McCulley as the interim assistant transportation supervisor at the daily stipends of $50 per day until the position is filled.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Dr. Haller, would you mind just filling us in as to why we amended the agenda and why we're bringing this forward today?
Sure. Thank you. As you said earlier, we had a retirement unexpectedly as Susan Health fell. We wish her well. All of us strive someday to retire. But we run a very large transportation department, and Ben Bernhardt has done an exceptional job, but it is a lot for one person to do, especially because Ben is also has a CDL license, and oftentimes when we're short, Ben is out on the road, as is Susan. Ben was out unexpectedly, and Kai stepped in, and she was phenomenal, and I can't thank her enough. She is here in the audience tonight. She is also one of our bus drivers, and she's also one of our bus driver trainers. And so having her be able to fulfill that role, we're confident that it will not interrupt our transportation services if Ben would not be available for whatever reason. So thank you to Kai, and I know that she's going to do a great job.
I also want to say thank you to Kai for setting out the other day, and I get a chance to. We really appreciate you. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
If I could just
Fine.
say, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
If I could just say, Aaron is here, Eric Seidel, and then if Don could just say a few words.
Beat me to it. Perfect. Thank you.
We just want to make sure he feels welcome, and that Don comes back tomorrow.
Well, first I want to say welcome to Eric. Welcome aboard here at Exeter. John Fiddler, 30 words or less, right? Right?
35.
To say that I am grateful to the board and to Dr. Haller for this opportunity is an epic understatement. We have a student body here at Exeter, and I'm going to try not to get emotional, but that's how strongly I feel about this. We have a student body here at Exeter that demonstrates a tremendous amount of character and integrity. We have staff and an admin team here that actually works together to create a great learning environment for students. We have supportive families. We have community partners that help us get the job done here in Exeter. We have community members who come out and teach us, especially support that actually cares about us. And so as Dr. Haller talked about, we really passionate Exeter. discussing. Yes.
Well, I wanted to reference Jason for sending the story. It's very good. It's okay to talk about that now. I'm a little confused. Just going on what Bob said, or go back to the original?
You're having a discussion on whether or not to approve the motion.
Oh, okay. So, good. So we're back to the original motion, back to square one. Open discussion. Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you for sending that article. I'm a pretty good Times reader, but I did miss that story. And jotted down some questions that were raised by the story to see if we're participating according to some of the paragraphs in the story. So number one is energy credits, which help lower electric bills in the community. Are we participating in energy credits?
Yeah, so part of the savings spreadsheet that's attached to the story is called SREC income. That is the energy credits. So for every 1,000 kilowatt hour that is produced by the solar unit, we receive one SREC credit. And the estimated value that's in that spreadsheet right now is around $40. And basically for every one of those credits, you sell it on the public utility market. And the utility that you buy that, they're actually supposed to have to obtain so many of those annually. That's how that income is, but that is factored into the savings spreadsheet.
Thank you. The reporter talked about Loudoun County, Virginia, which was made news recently for other reasons, but they were able to install, I forget the number, I think it was around 20 mobile Wi-Fi stations for the community. Is that something we're considering?
There's not been any discussion about mobile Wi-Fi.
But I mean, is that something we would consider? Do we know if all of our kids have access to Wi-Fi for their computers?
There is a program that's optional. Reimers has talked about previously. Some districts are not to it, which allows students to be able to monitor the actual production of solar energy. It's part of the learning opportunity. It's part of the experience of having solar in the district, which is to be extended to the district work. That's what you're talking about.
No, these are mobile Wi-Fi stations that benefit the community.
During the pandemic, we were moved to learning. We put hotspots. We sell Wi-Fi in certain areas.
But wouldn't they do that in the district? Well, it's an expense, but Loudoun County was able to do it based on the savings.
Oh yeah, this whole plan is to decrease expenses. I mean, you can do whatever you want. Yeah, increase expenses. I'm not just trying to save money and trying to avoid tax increases.
But what I'm saying though is they saved money and used the savings.
So I guess with this plan, this plan calls for nothing. If we decided we need to use mobile Wi-Fi with the savings, that would be
So we could revisit. The reporter spent a lot of time talking about students helping with the installation. They called them, she called them solar apprenticeships, where the students earn $17 an hour, plus credits toward becoming a solar and electrical technician. That's Greenworks, maybe if are they here tonight?
Greenworks is here. I believe Quandale is here.
Have you folks done that in other projects?
Sorry, Doug, would you mind going to the microphone just for the folks watching at home?
To answer the question, we have looked at that in other projects. There's been interest in the department
districts and other potential solar users. If we chose to move forward with it, then it is absolutely possible. There's obviously things that need to be considered with safety and with training and with some basics to make sure that we have interns and maybe training interns to be able to learn what to be safe. It's absolutely very doable.
Yeah, I mean, it might be something that Mark reads in his internship. She also wrote about federal funding for energy upgrades. Are we getting any federal funding for this program?
No, additional federal funding, where, but what's been out there so far, we don't know. It's specific building, DE districts, some other urban districts, possible bills in that. We've talked about, even like last year when we did the propane buses, I didn't talk about grants, but grant came available on the airfare, so whenever this funding was going on. Nice thing for buses, needy districts don't have any buses, so they have to have extra money to be able to get some grant. That might be the same way, might not put up their portion towards projects. We'll still apply, but there's nothing out there saying yes, they're going to give us.
Okay. I'll come back to that based on one of the letters we received today. The reporter also talked about utilities charging fees. That was, she said that was the one sort of strike against this sort of things. Are you aware of having utilities charging fees to your customers?
Again, the utility would charge an interconnection fee, and always charges an interconnection fee to connect this array to the grid. We have an allowance, a significant allowance based on our experience for a function of other fees in the proposal, and that's all included as part of the financing.
Do you have a dollar?
And again, that's based on our experience with some of the projects and our experience there.
She also talked about the Inflation Reduction Act and credits that cover 30% of the cost of these programs.
Those are actually tax credits, and as a school district, we don't pay taxes. That's why I looked at doing the power purchase agreement where the investors take those credits. Basically, the money's out of their pocket.
And one of the, we received about a half dozen letters over the last 2 or 3 days from members of the community. One of them recommended that we look at state.
I have not found one that we're actually eligible because they have a map of, I don't want to call poverty letter, but needy areas. We fall outside of it.
And they're the state incentive that's available for solar is the SREC, or solar renewable energy certificate. That is the source.
Okay, thank you.
I'm being told that there's no sound on the video right now. Is it possible that we could check that? I'd like to say, are you done? Sorry. A couple things. I have a couple things related to this proposal, and then I just wanted to say a couple things. Before I did, I just wanted to thank the community members that came out tonight, as well as community members that have reached out to us. I think we constantly say, we need to hear from you, and if we don't hear from you, we don't know what you're thinking. So I certainly appreciate the feedback, and I take everything that everyone says into consideration as we move forward. I think that this contract looks a lot better than it did a month ago. I think that there are still a lot of holes in the contract. There seems to be a lot of gray area to me. I know that a lot of things have to kind of click once we get started, and I understand that process. I think that there's not really a lot of definition to some of these things as far as landscape and privacy fencing, and I'm just having a hard time getting a vision of that. And my fear is that any time that we sign a contract, that once we sign the contract, the way the contract is written is what we get, and that I believe that that's when things start to cost money. And I think we need to continue to look at that. Specifically to today, though, what I'd like to say is, if we buy this system in 6 years, your company is going to, during those first 6 years, it's going to do all the maintenance, any work that needs to be done. It seems like it's, I don't do this for a living, it seems like it's pretty extensive, and it's all in, sure. But just hypothetically saying after 6 years, we say, hey, I think we want to buy that system. What does it cost? If you had to guess, what would it cost the district at that point where we have to start doing that maintenance?
There's a column of operations and maintenance column.
Okay.
Cash flow analysis that shows you, given today's rates, what we would charge if you contracted with Greenworks Solar Energy to operate and maintain the system after you purchase. That's assuming you would go with us. You can use any certified electrical contractor. Those are our numbers. You can dig that if you choose to. And it's really, when you look at that versus your other costs on that spreadsheet, that's really a relatively minor operations and maintenance piece. It's not one of the major costs on the sheet. The reason there is that the panels themselves are solid state, they're moving parts, so they're going to come with 30-year power production warranties. There's really only inverters that turn DC electricity into AC electricity that need to be replaced probably after year 20. There's a 20-year warranty to install them with. We've included a full replacement cost in year 21. Other than that, there's no moving parts to the system, so it's a very reliable system. The upshot is that keeps maintenance costs relatively low.
However, while we're with you, we contract with you to say that you're going to maintain that minimum of 85%. If after that 6 years we see that drop, is there an additional cost for us to get that above 85%?
There's not. The panels themselves will come with a 30-year power production warranty. If any given panel or more than one panel doesn't produce 80% of its rated output over a 30-year period, the manufacturer will replace the panel free of cost.
I think you might be talking about the minimum biennial.
Yeah.
That's where
those are two different things. Yep.
Yeah, that's where the 85%.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Exactly. Yeah, so we put a production guarantee, instead of a warranty, a guarantee on the output of the system, and we do that on a 2-year period, given that weather can change over the course of 1 year. So we put it on a 24-month period, and that guarantees in the contract. Of course, when you buy the system out, that guarantee will go away. But with the design software that we use and the prediction that's built into that software, we feel really comfortable with the output of our systems versus what we show.
So let's just say we buy it and we use your software, and it does drop to 80% biennial. What is it going to take for us to get that up to that 85?
Sure. The only thing that would really cause it to drop would be the degradation of the panels, and that's a really well-known number in terms of panel degradation. And it's not just on our systems, it's on solar panels all over the globe, really. We put a 0.5% degradation into your output. If you look at the left-hand column on the cash flow analysis, that shows the kilowatt hour output every year. And if you go from year 1 to year 2 to year 3, you'll see that number decrease slightly every year. We've built in a 0.5% degradation into the cash flow analysis, our data on all of our systems. And I think we mentioned before in one of these meetings that we put up $250 million worth of solar since 2010. So we put up a lot of solar. We've looked at our data from all of the systems that we've installed. We actually see more on the order of a quarter of a percent degradation every year. We build 0.5% in up from the quarter just to make sure we're conservative. So other than degradation of the panels, there's really, or total failure of the panel, and I think we mentioned again earlier that we put up about 1.3 million or 1.4 million panels since 2010. We've had to replace 6 of those 1.3 million total because a rock has been thrown by a commercial lawnmower. The panel broke the panel and we replaced it. Other than that, in the last 12 years, putting up well over 1 million panels, we've not had to replace it. So that kind of total failure of panel usually doesn't happen. The degradation is a predictable number. So I don't see the path, Tim, to get to that significant decrease in output of the system.
Good. And my last question regarding the system, this proposal is, when I add up all the numbers of we stayed with you guys for 28 years versus 6 years presumed market value buyout, maintenance service fee. According to you guys, last month, nobody's doing the buyout. So if you see that much of a cost savings after 6 years going all the way in, as opposed to running this out for 28 years, why is no one buying the system?
Well, we've been around since 2010, so if you go back 5 years, most of our systems have been installed within the last 5 years. Is the way that works because of the way the business has grown. It makes more financial sense to buy a system out, and you can see that between year 5 and year 6. You can see the difference there, given an estimation of interest rate, obviously. It makes financial sense to do that. We've not seen those buyouts yet, but for the bulk of the systems that we've installed, we're still waiting for those 5-year periods to occur.
What's the oldest system that you have right now?
10.
So
the oldest system is back in 2010. I have to go back and check for you to see why it was earlier about having 12-year systems.
All right, very good. You clearly know your stuff, and I do appreciate that. So thank you for all you've done for us. I know it's been a long process through it. To the board, I have other questions, but I'm gonna save them for right now. I think the issue for me is that there's a lot of different options here, and as we've seen some of these questions come through from Quandel through email, we're only looking at one proposal here, and I think that we haven't exhausted all of our options to look at all those proposals, and I think we have to take all of them into account, as well as what the community has asked us to go ahead and do that. I don't think there's a rush here. I think that we're in the right direction. I think it's taken a lot of work, but I think that there's more work to do. I'd like to let the discussion continue, but what I'd like to see is for us to extend this and continue with more discussion at the next whole meeting. We really only get to talk about this together as a group twice a month, and so kind of have to collect all those questions and go by the feedback from the teams that are working on this. And I just think that one proposal here I'm not talking Greenworks versus another company. I'm saying one proposal, meaning the way we have our array set up versus other ways that we might consider doing it, and what that means in the long run. We really haven't seen a contract for any other proposal. We've only seen it for this proposal. And so while I think we're getting closer, I just don't think we're there yet. I'd like to see us continue down this road so we can find all those answers we're looking for. Thank you.
I have said it many times before. One thing brought up by one of the audience this evening was the borough and the township restrictions or governance on this. I asked about this and I was told, the township really wants to have it, and we haven't talked to the borough yet, but they'll be okay. Well, I think the borough of St. Lawrence is a very, they've got their way. And for anyone to assume that they're going to go along with you building an industrial facility within their limits, within a housing area, better go talk to the council before you go do that. Because that's what we're doing. We're building an industrial facility within a area. As I have said before, the place you have designated for building to the west of the Owatton is the only plot of land we have suitable for construction of any buildings that might come up. The Greenworks had it laid out on the east side, and somebody said, well, it's cheaper to do it down on that flat land. And I am telling you that if in 15 years you have to build another building and you go out and try to find a 20-acre site, you are going to pay mega bucks, much more than you were paying for the putting it on the slope land to the east of the water. So I sound like a broken record, but that's true.
Thank you, Mr. Pender.
Doug, I just have a question about the cash flow analysis that you put together. When that was first provided to us, that was before the Inflation Reduction Act. I think it was based upon a 26% tax credit.
Yes.
Now the tax credit is 30%, and I'm wondering, was that cash flow analysis document, was it amended to reflect the additional savings that would be yielded from that 30%?
I believe we've updated to the 30%. Dave, I'll go back and double check that if there's any advantage there that we haven't updated yet. We'll certainly bring that back.
Yeah, I just haven't seen any. I mean, the cash flow documents that I've seen have all been the same. So I think that would be
absolutely
valuable.
No, that'll all be brought back in. Absolutely.
Can I ask a question? So we're talking right now about moving forward with an installation of a solar farm. Are we specifically saying it will be done this way, period, in this area at this point? Or are we just saying we want to move forward, go talk to the borough, go talk to the township, go talk to the neighbors?
Yes, because actually, we would not consult with the contractor. Yeah, but they can't talk with us until they have a contract and they're representing us. So, go ahead, sure.
Right. Now, the contract that you're looking at approving tonight just gets the process going. And there are about half a dozen, at least, out clauses for the district. If the township says no, if you can't get the zoning permits approved, all of those things allow us to break the contract and no cost to the district. So there are multiple steps along the way. If it's not working, the district can exit the contract without cost or penalty.
So we've added the connection.
The connection
as
fee,
well.
right.
If we're not satisfied with the connection fee, we could also.
That's right, the utility connection fee. If that turns out to be exorbitant, more than we were planning on, more than the cost estimate, that is reason enough to walk away from this arrangement.
But do we have the T&C clause? Say we just decide we don't like it. Do we have that?
It depends on most of the out provisions are contingent on something not working out.
Correct.
So there is no clause in there that just says, we changed our mind Tuesday. And no more after they've started building. You know.
I think the problem with that is that I'm assuming we would even be able to get investors to agree to a contract that has that kind of type of language where we can just walk away.
Sure. There's real money that's going to be spent here. And it's very clever to me.
So,
But I think the answer to Dr. Herring's question, this specific contract, it includes the arrays specifically to Watton and admin and right. This is not saying if we approve the contract, then we can decide how we're going to design the farm. This is the farm.
Right.
Those arrays
That's
are
what I
pointed out. Those locations.
They are, but if you were to, as in any construction project, if you were to find that the township said, you can't put it here, but we'll allow you to put it there, that would just be a part of the adjustment of the project.
And if I may, we've done other projects and are doing another project right now in which after the contract was signed, the district decided to relocate some of the array to a rooftop instead of on the ground and make some other changes, and we will come.
that location can be changed then. And we can get more proposals from Greenworks as Mr. Morgan had requested after we vote on this, if we choose to vote yes.
But if I may interject quickly there too, the power service agreement structure that we recommended in this case is the structure that we recommend and use in almost every not-for-profit project that we do, because it's the most cash advantageous to a not-for-profit like a school district. When we're requested to do so, we use a power purchase agreement structure, which is a different structure. When we compete against competitive power purchase agreement structures, we are invariably more competitive with the power service agreement structure proposed here. And we propose in other cases. We're a CPA-driven firm. The power service agreement structure we proposed here, we propose because it is the most advantageous to a not-for-profit like a school district.
I think the other thing is, well, there are other areas in the contract that would have to change if we change locations, such as the minimum output. If we looked at that proposal, that was at a Rock Creek, that was less output, was 100%. So that would have to get adjusted with that contract as well.
Right. And that's fine to amend the contract afterwards, but you can't even find out some of your preliminary ifs until you get through something and subject to amendment if you change your regular conditions.
So if we had anybody that was not in favor of building in Louch County, you're saying that we could theoretically approve the contract amendment later?
Yes.
Okay, but Mike pointed out, I live by contracts, and although folks at Greenworks are very nice people, and I'm sure they're very accommodating, if we go to court, this is the document that we go.
This is what they have proposed in the contract is the minimum that they will provide, the minimum expectation that the district is committing itself to. So if there are changes, they would have to be agreed upon.
Negotiated.
Right, that's correct.
And prices.
Mrs. Montaigne, while we're kind of on the topic of the contract, do you have a list of the changes, the modifications that were made? If you don't, I think I have a general list of them, but
All of the questions that were
from you, so
pretty much addressed.
I
I
could
think the only not changed
yes.
but the IRS has a
They have clawback provisions. So one of the questions that I know came up before, and I think the one I missed, was the issue of the 6-year buyout. The fair market value, right? And that there was a request to have a cap put on that. For the investors to get this project started and funded, they get tax credits. So at the end of the earliest that they can be relieved of this is 6 years. If they undersell for less than fair market value, then there are IRS clawback provisions. They have to pay back their tax credits that they got the benefit of. So if investors I would think would go after something like that if that was the case. And what I had mentioned to Brian was, we have no idea what the value will be 6 years from now or later, 10 years from now. And it's fair and reasonable, just like any property that you might want to know the fair market value for a sale or for taxes or whatever. At that time, you establish what the fair market value is at that time, and that makes an arm's length transaction for everybody. It avoids for the investors the clawback concerns and liability for them, which will entice them, I suppose, to get involved in a project like this. And it's not unduly, at least in my opinion, it's not unduly unfair to the district because you are getting fair market value.
So I guess my hesitation there is, as long as we talk about this, the savings sheets have projected a $6.9 million buyout system. But what I'm hearing is we don't know the cost. We're just going to guess that it's $6.9 million. I guess that's the problem I have. Because it could be a lot more, right?
It could be most likely. I wanted to answer Tim's question. Why have most of the time say that. The only reason I had this buyout figure thrown in there is because in 6 or 7 years we don't have debt. We could actually just pay it off with what we would have made as a debt payment. Other districts did not, that have been in this for a while, not paid it off because they didn't incur it. But in the cash flow projections, I also put in there the cost of the cost of money. That could go up. And right now, the work rate's a little bit under 3.29 the last time I heard. Bond issue with AA rating. Doug, are you allowed to say with your contracts that you have now, how close your termination fee is to people that are at 6 or would have been at 6 for their fair market value? What is the margin of error there?
The IRS is clearly at the table here. We are trying to hold to that number that we put in the contract. And again, there's been no buyout that we already talked about to be able to trigger that, but it should be that should be a number that you can rely on here. In the absolute guarantees, because of all the things that Sharon talked about a little while ago. But there is no intention to run that number up.
There's no intention, but it's a fair market value. So the intention wouldn't be on you regardless, correct? You know, if the market goes up, the value goes up.
We've seen used cars appreciate
right.
pretty generously,
Right.
and
we don't blame Greenworks.
Yeah,
I wouldn't blame Greenworks for that, but at the end of the day, if the market value is higher, the market value is higher.
But when you look underneath that, the only thing that would drive the value of the system up would be the cost of electricity that went up significantly. And if that's the case, then the system is going to be more valuable to the district as well. See what I mean? The only thing that I know in a situation like this is that the cost of electricity in most parts of Pennsylvania, almost in all parts of Pennsylvania, has almost doubled in the last 2 years. And I think with what's going on in Eastern Europe and with all of the energy issues that are associated with what's going on in Eastern Europe, that energy costs will continue to go up globally. That's not something you could control as a Pennsylvania legislator. Those energy costs are going to continue to go up globally. That makes this system more valuable as conventional electricity costs continue to rise. If you look at the bottom right-hand corner of the cash flow analysis that we've given you, it shows that the expected solar-generated electricity cost from this system at this size, given the conditions that we've put into that spreadsheet, is 3.3 cents a kilowatt hour. Over 40 years, that's the average cost of your solar-generated electricity, assuming you're going to move forward here, is 3.3 cents a kilowatt hour. The only two things that number depends on are the interest rate that you're going to use to borrow to pay for the system once you buy it out, assuming that you do, and SREC value itself. Whether it goes up or it goes down will affect that 3.3 cents. If SREC values go up, it'll take that value lower, 3 cents down below 3 probably. If SREC values would drop, it would take that 3.3 up somewhat. But over a 40-year period, if you can lock in your electricity costs now at 3.3 cents plus or minus, I would argue that over the next 40 years, 3.3 cents per kilowatt hour of electricity is going to be a really good deal by anyone's estimation at this point. So there are risks involved in moving forward with a solar project. I think the bigger risk is to not develop your own generating system, because if you don't develop your own generating system and you're going to rely on buying electricity from the utility for the next 40 years, the risk there, you've already seen that risk over the last 24 months. The risk over the next 40 years, in my mind, is tremendous. So this is the only way that you can lock in your electricity cost as a district for the next 40 years. That to me is a tremendous opportunity. And yes, there are risks involved in moving forward with developing the project, This is the same contract that we use, the same terms that we've used for all of the other systems that we've done for not-for-profits. 80% of the work that we've done over the last 12 years or so is for not-for-profits. That power service agreement structure that you've got is exactly what we've used for everyone else. I feel it's the most advantageous way to do this, and that's why we recommend it.
Doug, I don't doubt your work here. I think you guys know what you're doing. My question is in the contract. I've said it before. We have not been given a guarantee of what out-of-pocket costs are. Greenworks may say that screening fence are arborvitaes, and they're going to plant them at 3 feet tall, and we will have a beautiful privacy fence in 18 years. We may say that's not good enough, and as a result, we want 15-foot trees, and that'll come as a cost to the district. That's one of many examples, if you ask me, that are not line by line on this contract. I think there are several things, and I also think when it comes to the proposal, while I understand that we can change it, I think the assumption to the taxpayer and to the community, if we do approve this today, is that we are going to go ahead with the proposal as it's written. Of course, there are reasons why we would have to change that. That's not avoidable by anybody here. You know, if there was a zoning issue, if there was some kind of an issue that we couldn't construct there, but the assumption would be that we would do it like this. I don't think that that's fair to the community. I think that we need to see what all the proposals look like so that this way we can make a good, conscious decision and make sure that the contract has, you know, one of two things. Either the contract has the writing in it, and if it doesn't have the writing in it, then we have some kind of a estimate from the administration of what they feel as though the out-of-pocket costs are going to be by the time the project is finished.
And just again, Tim, when you're saying proposals, you're talking about the array locations.
The array locations as they're written within this contract.
The contract.
And I believe this is what we're voting on today, is this specific contract.
That's correct. Yep.
If I could interject one last thing. The only timing issue that's at the table here is part of the Inflation Reduction Act legislation that was just enacted. There is a window for the next couple of months under which, with the increase in the investment tax credit from 26% to 30%, what's going to happen over the next couple of months is that any project over 1 megawatt of capacity is going to require what's called prevailing wage labor to be used to install the project, union wage labor, if you will. That's going to make the project a fair amount more expensive. There's a grace period window for the next couple of months, and it's not determined yet, that if you get a project moving forward in the relatively shorter term over the next couple of months, you can take advantage of the 30% investment tax credit without having to bear the additional installation cost of that other provision of the Inflation Reduction Act. So there is a little bit of a window here that could be to the advantage of the district in moving forward in the shorter term.
Given that, when would be the cutoff in terms of getting a signed proposal?
Not determined yet, Jason.
Okay.
Like any other bill that's enacted, you pass the bill and then you work out the details. That's one of the details that we're watching carefully, but it's not determined yet. What I do know at this point is that the sooner you would move forward, the better. You know, there is no harm in acting now because you can reap those benefits, or you have a better chance of reaping that benefit than you do in waiting.
Doug, am I accurate in my understanding that increase, and due to the prevailing wage, could be as much as 20% more for the project costs?
20 to 25. That's correct. It's not trivial. Not insignificant.
That's a significant.
But that's built. But that part was built into this contract, correct?
No, what's built into this contract is commercial labor rate, and I believe now that you've mentioned it, 26%, and we'll update to 30%. We have not included those additional costs into the contract because that's not determined yet in the wake of the enaction of the bill.
Yeah, the prevailing wage was introduced with the Inflation Reduction Act. That's what it's.
That's not meant to push the board's decision by any means.
Understood.
Doug, question on SREX. So based on the contract that I saw out there, the SRECs from year one would be owned by the district.
Correct.
So even though we're contracting, we would still get the SRECs. How does that typically work with school district administration? Somebody's just going on the SREC trading website and
You can.
Yeah.
You can go on SREC Trade and trade those things yourself.
Yeah.
You can engage a broker, and we are an aggregator and broker of SRECs as well as other entities are.
Yeah.
We can do that for you. Other entities can do that for you as well. We try to keep our fees as low as possible. We aggregate somewhere on the order of 35,000 SRECs a year that we sell for different owners of solar properties that either we've developed or other entities have developed. We'll count, if you choose to hire us to do that, we'll counsel you on when to hold, when to sell. You can hold SRECs for a 3-year period. If you think the market for those SREC certificates is going to go up over the next 3 years, you can choose to hold them. If you'd rather take the cash now, you can choose to sell them. If you develop your project and we're a year or so from now and we're ready to turn your project on, we could go out to the market if you were interested and sell a 3 to maybe even 5-year strip of those SRECs. You could go to an investor and say, we're interested as Exeter Township School District in selling the next 3 years worth of our SREC certificates that we're going to generate. And an investor may come back to you at $35 or $37 per certificate and say, I'll buy your next 3 or 5 years worth of those things. You would hedge your cash flow. The investor obviously is betting on the fact that value is going to go up and they can resell them. But we or another group can counsel you on all of the nuances.
so just to clarify, so the on the savings spreadsheet, obviously we had some projected numbers in there. In the beginning years it was $40 per unit. There, you had mentioned there is a fee though that gets taken per SREC.
Yes, and we tried to do that as a net of fees number that's in the cash flow analysis.
Okay, so that is adjusted for any fees that get taken from there. Okay.
Now, if I may, Jason, the other thing that I personally work on, I spend a couple of hours a month in the Capitol lobbying for stronger solar legislation with PA legislators. Pennsylvania is really trailing almost every other state around us except Ohio in its renewable policy. We're trying to get what's currently the 0.5% of Pennsylvania's total generation of electricity. 0.5% right now is mandated to be generated by this kind of solar that you're going to do behind the meter. We're trying, and that's way behind other states except for Ohio. We're trying to get that 0.5% turned into 2 or 2.5% of Pennsylvania's overall generation would be because of this kind of solar. If we can get that legislation passed, I think we can take the $40 value up to $60, $80, maybe $100 per certificate. No guarantees on that, but that's where we're trying to take the legislation. That's where those certificate values are in states like New Jersey, who have managed their programs more carefully than Pennsylvania has. That would all be upside for the district under the power service agreement structure that we presented to you. So if you look at the column that shows SREC value in the cash flow analysis, and you look at the kinds of income per year that show in that column, that's at a $40 value. If you take that $40 and turn it into $80, that overall annual dollar value for SRECs doubles. And that gets really, really significant. I think there's about $8 million worth of SREC value shown on that sheet. If you look at the bottom of that SREC column, if you can double that $8 million value, you just added another $8 million worth of revenue to the district over the 40-year period.
The other thing I was going to ask if you could clarify, I think Quandale actually clarified some of this as well, but I think there's been some confusion in terms of the connections and how the solar is connected and how the power generation works. So my understanding, if we would go with the current configuration, there would be 3 physical connections to the arrays, 1 at each building, 1 at Owatton, 1 at Rifton, and 1 at what was the third location? Louch, thank you. Wow, yes. And so with those physical locations, if there would be an issue with the system or there was not enough sun that day, we are, those buildings are still connected to the utility and they just use the regular utility.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The other question kind of comes back to your conversation back in March, I believe. Oh, my mic just went out. It sounded like it did. How about now? Okay. Back in March, there was I mentioned virtual net metering. And so even though it's only physically connected to 3 buildings, we are still putting back 110%, starting in year 1, 110% back into the grid. The other buildings' electric bills get credited with the electric generation. So just because they're not connected physically does not mean they're not benefiting, as long as they're within a 2-mile radius.
That's correct. 2 miles, that's the code applies. That's correct.
Okay. So just from my personal opinion, I do, I'm kind of thinking along the same line as Mr. Morgan. I do think we had, we did have a number of community members reach out to us, specifically ones that were located near the Louse Field here. Also appreciate the comments from, from some of the sports groups that also use that field. I do understand that is widely used. There was a group of kids out there today playing on it as we were coming in. So I think I would like to see either we go back to option B, which is using all of Oahu, or we look at a different configuration that we haven't seen before.
And again,
You mean what? And right.
Oahu and Rifton, yes. Thank you.
And again, those adjustments are possible after a contract will be in place, and we've done it in the past. But that's entirely up to you.
Yeah, I think the thing that kind of is hanging the board up a little bit is that option A is embedded in the contract, and there may be some contract language that is specific to option A. And if we wanted to modify, then there may have to be some changes in the contract as well. I think I get the sense that that's a little bit of the hang up, with that. And I also think the board feels it's necessary to have a little more dialogue on the solar farm placements. We've talked about, the questions about Loush and whether it's appropriate to kind of, install here. And Mr. Quinter has often brought up comments about, whether or not it's prudent to kind of build on that existing land there. So I think the board still has to resolve that issue. But part of me is really sensitive to what you're saying in terms of the timeliness of this. I mean, that's an element. I mean, I think we're all. I get the sense that all of us. There's not anybody on this board who's opposed to solar from but I think that there's just some hesitation because there's some aspects that we're not quite certain about yet, and I think probably the majority of that has to do with the location. So I'm hoping the board can be a little bit more receptive to the idea that we could look at this contract, how even agree that the placement options do not apply, specifically. I don't even know how that enter into a motion or a revised motion or whatever. But I think that's probably the number one hang up that I see. And I could be wrong, but I know Mr. Morgan said some things about some items in the contract, but I don't know if that's as significant as the placement discussions.
I wanted to also suggest one extra loud, suggest that rather than coming up with the district's ideal perfect locations, that discussion run tandem with any discussions that have to take place with zoning approvals, etc., because the district and the board may come up with the perfect arrangement and then find out that it's not going to get approved for whatever reason. I think you could get the motion approved subject to amending the locations and any ancillary provisions
to allow both of those conversations to move forward in a parallel track. I'm not suggesting you have to, but it's a thought.
But there's difference in, I mean, there'll be different service fees depending on what we do. I mean, there's a lot of different cost analysis that's done. And I think it doesn't matter what proposal we would choose. If there, like we said in the beginning, if there were zoning issues, that would be an extenuating circumstance that would require you to look at different things. At this time, I'd like to make a motion that we table this.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. No discussion. No discussion. Okay. So all in favor say aye.
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 Noes?
No.
No. Do we need to-
Do you want a roll call?
Can you do a roll call to confirm whether we want to table this to go forward?
Dr. Andrea Battler?
Let me make this clear first. I had quite a few questions and things that I wanted to say on this topic. If we table this right now, I cannot make those statements. I cannot ask these questions. I'm going to have to ask them at the next meeting, correct? Correct. And if I don't, and if I say no, I ask the questions and this goes to a vote. Is that correct?
Could be tabled. A
It
motion
could be tabled
but
again.
Another motion could go out.
Right. Okay, sorry. Forgive me, because I was all ready for this. So, no.
Sharon, can you, a no is not the table?
A no is not to table, to continue the discussion.
John Fiddler?
Yes.
Dr. Ann Herring?
No.
Dr. David Hemberger?
No.
Jason Mell?
No.
Robert Quinter? Timothy Morgan?
Yes.
Julia Schaefer?
Yes.
Allison Wilson?
No.
5 no, 4 yes.
So now you can continue it if there's further discussion. Okay. And after I ask these questions, can I make a motion to table this? Just questioning. All right,
Sure.
fabulous. Thank you. Sorry, sir. And thank you so much for your patience. There are a couple questions that if they were already answered, please forgive me. When it comes to the contract service, the G here, I would say in your
Contract service payments.
yes, thank you. The contract service payments. Can you tell me what is the lease rate and what is like the service cost? Is service cost only $40,000 like it is in the operations and maintenance?
That's a good, yeah, that's fair.
The rest is okay.
Yes.
So, and is that the actual lease rate of this entire $6.9 million thing is okay?
That's good.
Just wanted to double check.
Yep.
The $40,000 in the operations and maintenance. Why don't we have a like specific service plan that's written that tells us exactly what's going to be happening and when? Considering, I mean, I realize it is a small portion of this, but it is still $4,000 a month.
Good question. The way this will practically work, if you would move forward under the proposal, the power service agreement structure proposal that we've shown you, for those first 5 years, like we've discussed, the investor, the special purpose entity that will create, that will hold the array for those first 5 years, the owners of the solar array will maintain the array for those first 5 years under those service payments that we just talked about. Once you purchase the system, then you'll have the option to either contract with us to do that maintenance or contract with someone else. We'd expect that you, and we could help you do this if you want us to develop a scope of work at that time that you can send out for bid for operations and maintenance. It's a pretty straightforward scope of work, but develop that scope of work, send it out for bid. This is in year 6 now, or at the end of year 5. decide which of those bids you had elected to choose in terms of your maintenance and go with them. So we haven't specified that at this point because it's honestly 5 years premature.
Sure, I understand that. Thank you very much.
Sure.
The other thing that I did have a question for, and perhaps this is for Brian, we come all the time to this table and we're constantly getting bids. This is not something that we have to bid, considering this is...
Not under present laws, because we are not building it, we're running into a power service agreement. If we went out and bid it, I imagine it'd probably double this cost.
Okay, that's what I...
Because we'd have to draw the specs, we'd have to hire architects, we
Sure.
have to, anything we bid has to go to fair wage.
Okay.
There is clauses that you can do certain things under energy savings projects or GESA, which is guaranteed energy savings. We did the HVAC project here under that, but that's a whole different.
Okay. Oh, geez, sorry. That's really loud. I'll step back. Okay, and for the LLC, the investors that you have, what is to say that they are not going to pull out after so many years? Like, I mean, you know, it's 6.9 million. I get they're getting a 30% decrease in their tax. You know, they're getting 30% tax break.
That's correct.
And what's to say after the next election that they don't pull out because they don't get any tax break?
Because they've got significant investment in the system at that point. They wouldn't pull out because they're going to spend a lot of money putting the system up for the district. That's why there's no upfront cost to the district to put this up, is that the investors themselves are going to go out of pocket to do it. And this is somewhere around a $7 or $8 million project. So they're going to front that money. They're going to get their reasonable return back by virtue of those contract service payments every year, and then the eventual system buyout.
Right. So those contracts. Right. So the effectiveness of the 1 year we're paying $600,000 to lease this, when we could be paying a much lower price to actually buy it, potentially, according to this spreadsheet here.
Well,
like
the way that spreadsheet,
principal and interest, I'm saying.
Exactly. But again, the investors have to hold the system. The IRS is going to be at the table when we sign this contract.
For the 5 years.
The IRS requirement is that those investors have to hold the system for 5 years after they put it up. If they don't, then they revert that 30% federal tax credit back to the Treasury. So they need to hold for 5 years. That's why we recommend that you buy out at 5 years and a day.
If they don't hold it, what happens? I mean, I get what happens to them. What happens to us?
You'd still have a system that's sitting there, so it would be tremendously to your advantage. But the investors are going to stay at the table, just like any investor in any project would, in order to be able to get their investment back.
Okay. And so they don't get it back until the 5 years is up, is what you're saying?
That's correct.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. And I just want to say, there is and I agree with Mr. Morgan, there is so much unknown here, not just with the projections, not just with the holes. There is a ton that we don't know. We don't know. I mean, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, yes, this looks great. $30 million savings. I get that. It's clean energy. I get that. That's fine. I get that it's all great and all. However, 40 years, even 28 years, but 40 years ago, we didn't even have a mobile phone. So to think that this is not going to change over the next 40, even 10 years, it just is, I think, is ridiculous to think that it's not going to be completely upgraded. I mean, people get cell phones every 2 years. So that concerns me. There's a lot of things in here concern me. And for those reasons, and the fact that I actually went out and drove around today all over Exeter, and I would say about 2% of Exeter residents have solar panels in their house, or on their house, or on their property. So it doesn't seem as though even Exeter residents will want to spend the amount of money on solar panels. So with that being said, I would like to,
Can I just propose that we make sure that we check to make sure there's no other discussion before somebody tables. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess one of the things that I'm thinking of, I just want to make sure I'm clear on one aspect of how this will operate for us. And that is, and this is my understanding, that at the end of the 6-year period of time, we actually have an option, or 5-year period of time, we have an option to purchase. And at that time, we'll have a better idea. We'll actually know, I would imagine, what the fair market value would be of the system. And if that fair market value is not advantageous to the school district, the district could continue with this current arrangement in perpetuity, I imagine.
In a 28-year period.
Yeah,
To do that.
yeah, until the end of the effective life of the system.
Financially, that wouldn't be to your advantage the way I see the project now, but you could.
But there is a financial advantage, but it's not as significant, right? I mean, we could continue beyond the 5 years to the very end of the period, and we would gain, we would benefit, but not to the degree of purchasing it. But we still have that option. It's still built on the contract, and we can make a decision at a later time. We're not bound to that. We're not bound to that $6.9 million commitment at that particular time. I just want to make sure I was clear on that, because I think that's, we're kind of like, I think, going into this and assuming that we're going to be, burdened with, a significant, investment that we maybe would have some regrets on. If we're not interested in that, we don't have to continue with this right now. I mean, we continue to benefit from the service, but we don't have to purchase it.
Yes, that's correct.
All right, just for my benefit, thank you.
Yep.
Those are my questions.
And again, the only thing that I can really tell you for sure at this point is that your electricity costs at the district have gone up by almost 100% in the last 24 months. That to me is the reason to go solar, because going with a solar installation like we're talking about is the only way to sidestep that, not just immediately, but for the next 40 years. You're going to be buying electricity 40 years from now, somehow, or you're going to generate it yourself.
But even with that service cost that we have that would go on after those 5 years, if energy costs continue to be inflated as they are and continue to go up, our cost will remain the same, essentially, right? As per the arrangement, as per the outline of that particular column of costs.
Districts that we completed projects for 2 years ago, that we were at the time forecasting $220,000 or so worth of savings every year, are now saving over $400,000. They haven't changed anything about their system, but the cost of electricity in the world around them doubled over the last 24 months.
Sure.
Mr. Feig, based at the last meeting, it was mentioned that we would have to at least contract with energy marketing for a year because of the system not being ready in time. Do you know, have we locked in a contract yet?
I was waiting to see what happens tonight, because right now I'm figuring we'd have to lock in for at least June through the end of the year, depending if we sign tonight. If we don't sign tonight, then I'm going to ask for another forward wholesale purchase to maybe through March of next year.
And
right now, if I locked in today, it'd be 10.1 cents a kilowatt hour. We are at 5.6, which is it's comprised of almost 2 cents, which is Med's portion, and 3.625 that we locked in 2018 that expires in May. Okay. So our electric rate's going to triple.
So yeah, and we're going to have to take that regardless of this approval, but it could increase.
Right now, I start budget, I'm figuring we're going to have 6 months of whatever the market rate will be. The longer we move, the more months.
The last time you investigated the price, it was 9.6. Is that correct?
And that's what we were still using for
the projections.
Projection, because that's what today is. But the wholesalers are telling me they expect it to be a lot higher in June. Now that might turn around in a year or two. I'm not sure when we're actually all of a sudden. But, the projection is closer to 10 to 11%. As of this afternoon, there it's at 10.1%, 1 cent all in.
So our electric bill right now is, I think you said around $600,000 a year.
Yeah, and that's based off a contract that we locked in 2018, which expires in May of 2023. And if you remember, when we started this last March, we had 1 month of savings because we were committed to purchasing at that price up through May. That was 6 months ago.
Okay. So what are we going to have to budget for next year?
About 1.5 times, because if we were able to switch over in December, the further out, we're looking at, it's for the full year, our electric bill is going to, with the transmission, probably be about 1.2 million.
$1 million. So.
Yeah, and that contract service fee that we're paying yearly, at least in the first 5 years, is including the energy cost with that. And then basically, with the SREC income that's projected, we're looking at closer to 4.5 cents, I think, is what that was coming to. There is no doubt in my mind. I think it's a good opportunity, something we should consider. I am concerned that the longer we continue to debate this, the more precarious situation we're going to end up in here. But yeah, what else to say?
I did want to say thank you to Mr. Heron for the schematic that you gave us. It does give me a good idea of where all the fields are that I didn't picture before, so thank you for sharing that with us. Should we move on to the vote? Does anybody else? Andrew?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to table this discussion.
Is there a second?
Excuse me, didn't we already vote to table?
It was defeated. It did not pass, so Andrea could continue her discussion. So now this is a new table.
Okay, we have a motion to table and a second. Can we do another roll call on that, please?
Dr. Andrea Bandler,
Yes.
John Fiddler,
Yes.
Dr. Ann Herring,
No.
Dr. David Hemberger,
No.
Jason Mill,
Yes.
Robert Quinter, Timothy Morgan,
Yes.
Julia Schaefer,
Yes.
Allison Wilson,
No.
6-3, yes. Motion tabled.
Motion tabled. Are we able to specifically request what we would like for the cow at this moment? Can we be very specific, or is this something that we wait for the cow? I like it. Okay. Can we specifically tell them what it is we would like to see at the cow at this moment? Can they?
I mean, for me, I would like to look at the proposals again for 100% generation at Oahu, or the original 65% generation at Oahu. I think Oahu, to me, is the preferable land. It is away from significant suburban development, and I think it's a good location for it. It's not taking over any fields that are being used currently, so in my opinion, that would be the two I would be looking for.
So Jason, are you saying the last option we have, the last two, option two?
Option two, and that, I'm sorry, I keep forgetting the little snippet of Riften, that would include Riften as well. You turn your mic up.
I'd like to see us revisit this contract. I want to see. I do think that when it comes to some of the little things, that this is a very generic, very broad contract. I think it really doesn't identify or protect us from. It says it really doesn't about landscape and about privacy fencing. And there's a lot of little things in here, and nothing that I'm willing to dive into at this time. I think it's something that I need to do some of my own research on and put a list together. And certainly welcome if anybody else had any thoughts on it. But I do think that if we can't further define it, then the district has to give us estimates on what they think our out-of-pocket dollars are going to be by the time this is completed in 12 to 13 months that it's going to take.
Is that something that can be to specify that?
You put anything you want in the contract.
Okay, so that's
What does the solicitor say?
Well, you can put anything in a contract. We might want to restructure the contract so that there are attachments, so that there's a contract for the basic services and structure, and then attachments, and then Mondell can develop several models and the associated terms that would go with each model, so that you have your options out there. And I guess I would ask that for some clarity on all the little items that people are looking for, so that we can work through those. My sense is that probably won't be difficult, but I'm not in a position to know what things people feel are missing.
I'd be happy to go through it and clarify it. And I guess just a question, because I don't know how we go forward with this, but I know we're not discussing this because it was tabled, but there was some question about working with the township, but I did think it was pretty clear in the contract that those proceedings do start after the contract was signed.
That's correct.
So I mean, the writing is in there that is going to happen, and that we do not have to continue should things not work out the way we're expecting them to work out.
That's correct. There's nothing that we need to do. We don't even move forward with that until we're engaged in a contract. I have looked at the zoning ordinance. There probably will need to be a variance that needs to go through with the zoning hearing board, but beyond that needs to be handled by the developer once they have the sketches and everything.
Okay. I just wanted, so I do not think that's something we have to identify. I think that's already been developed.
But to be crystal clear, if we should be reaching out to Sharon with the information that we would like to see presented.
Right.
Sharon, and I would even say Mr. Fike, if there's other financial information that needs to get addressed, yeah.
Thank you.
You should probably wait till public comment.
If you can wait until public comment, please.
Okay, moving on to item C. We're going to be talking about the Board Resolution Act 57, 2022. It is recommended that the Board of Directors of the Exeter Township School District approves the board resolution pursuant to Act 57 of 2022, exempting taxpayers from additional charges for real estate taxes when taxpayers fail to receive tax notice.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Dr. Hearing, that is it for my report.
Thank you, Mr. Mel. Policy Committee, Dr. Hamburger.
That's recommended the Board of School Directors approve two policies on the agenda, one for first reading, Policy 227, and second reading, Policy 218.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I actually had a question regarding policy number 227, sorry, I'm tired. With definitions, it says number 5, drug paraphernalia. Should we be, or is there somewhere in the policies that defines that?
Let me catch up to you. Are you talking about number 5 under definitions? So see the citations that are marked in board docs? where there's the number 1 and the number 2, that's where definitions are provided.
Thank you for clarifying that. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
That's all for policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hamburger. Athletics and extracurricular activities, Mrs. Wilson.
Thank you. Everything is back into full swing with the athletics and extracurricular activities at the junior high and high school. Last Friday evening, Mr. Legath invited me to the Hall of Fame induction at prior to the football game, where Michael Mennett, Kyle Yogum, and Mike Troutman were inducted into the Exeter Athletic Hall of Fame. And coming up, we have homecoming activities October 6th through the 8th. Already.
My son loses his crown. Exeter Community Education Foundation, Dr. Battler.
I'm so sorry. Okay. ECEF is pleased to report that we have received a $5,500 grant from AXA XL in support of sneakers for Exeter Township School District students in need. Our student outreach group is in the planning phase for an event around the grant-funded sneakers, which will also include the option for students to also receive personal care items and haircuts. As homecoming approaches, ECEF is happy to team up with the Homecoming Parade Planning Committee to schedule food trucks for the bonfire on Thursday, October 6th. ECEF met with Exeter's administration team on September 8th to discuss district goals and wish list items. Focus is placed on 1, 3, 5, and even 10-year objectives and large wish list items for the district as a whole. As a fundraising group formed to help the district, we commonly get asked about wish list items for the district. We're excited to hear what the team comes up with. These impactful items are a great roadmap for ECEF and Exeter. And I'd just like to put a plug in, if you haven't gone on your teacher's Amazon wish list, I would really recommend doing that. It's kind of cool to see what they want in their room and how they're going to use it, and I've done that quite a few times. So, thank you.
Thank you. BCTC Joint Operating Committee, Mr. Fiddler.
We have another meeting next week. You've had nothing to report beyond the JOC briefs that you've received.
Thank you. Dr. Hamburger, can you cover BCIU Board of Directors and Legislative Lead?
Will do. BCIU board met this past Thursday, September 15th. In addition to its regular business, the board authorized an agreement with the Exeter Township School District for the BCIU to provide professional services related to the English language development curriculum. And I think that may have been on our board for approval as well. And the summary of the board meeting is also provided. I provided that to the board in what's happening at BCIU board meeting that was sent to all board members late last week. In terms of legislation, there's some interesting stuff at the federal level and at the state level. I'll start with the federal level. The Supreme Court has, as of June 21st, ended its restriction on the use of taxpayer money for religious education. And that means that state programs that provide money for public school tuition can't exclude schools that offer religious instruction. So what this does is the decision sort of ended a long-standing restriction on using taxpayer money to pay for religious education, which opens the door for those seeking taxpayer funding for religious schools. Not a good outcome for public education. Another piece of possible change to legislation and regulations are Title IX, and the Biden administration is hoping to expand the scope of Title IX protections against discrimination based on sex to include discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. So those are two, I think, federal cases that are interesting, and there's a little bit more detail about those in the legislative report that I sent to the board earlier this week. At the state level, updates in the final form, Chapter 4 science standards, which I'm sure our administration is well aware of. There's a 3-year implementation window for those standards, but I'm sure that's going to keep our administrators and teachers busy for a while. In September, early September, Governor Wolf signed the Universal Free Breakfast Program. So this is a $21.5 million plan to provide universal free school breakfast programs to all students in public education in Pennsylvania. Another bill that was vetoed by Governor Wolf was the Protect Women's Sports Act. And that bill would have required sports activities in public schools to be expressly designated male, female, or co-ed. The designation would be based on sex, which is defined as the biological distinction between males and females. So that legislation would have effectively prohibited trans athletes from competing in sports that correspond to their gender identity. And again, that was vetoed by Governor Wolf. And then the last thing I'll just mention is tuition vouchers. And this seems to come up on a fairly regular basis. The bill, in this case, the bill, it's being referred to the Senate Appropriations Committee, establishes a Lifeline Scholarship to give parents of any student in grades 1 to 12 who reside in the attendance areas of the lowest achieving school districts, give them vouchers to pay for their tuition in an alternative academic setting. So if you're in a district that is low performing, low achievement, and family members do not want to send their kids to that school, they would be giving a scholarship from, based on taxpayers' money. And this is this has always been problematic. It's been something that PSBA and PSEA have always fought against, because it's another one of those situations where money is not going into public education. It's going into private or non-public education programs. So more information is available in the information I sent you, more detail on these things. And if you have any questions anywhere along the line, please feel free to get in touch with me, and I'll be glad to kind of do some more research. But that's all for my report today, Dr.
Thank you.
Dr. Herring, I have a question. With the free breakfast, as we resume that free breakfast, does Exeter increase the amount of meals as a result of that they're bringing in?
So our food services supervisor is actually here, Courtney Epler. If you could come up and share that, because I don't know those numbers off the
I'm
bat.
sorry to put you on the spot, Courtney.
Otherwise, I would have said, I will get those numbers for you.
What was the question again?
So now that they're resuming the free breakfast, does Exeter increase the amount of meals that they're bringing into the district? That's my first question.
Yep. So we're still trying to figure out the best plan, because all of our staff is at lunchtime mostly, so problematic. But we have a few plans in place, and we're working out some details now to be ready. It's going to go from 30 children up to 50. So trying to work out the details on how to get all those kids through the breakfast.
So is there often waste from that? I guess my question is, what are we, if we're not, if you plan for 300 meals and you only use 200 meals, or is there a way that we're able to donate that food back into the community?
So what we would do is whatever's on the line, we just put back in the next day. Whatever's out in the cafeteria, work out, share with that, but we don't have to. But whatever's on the line, say we plan for 300 meals, but it's not taken at breakfast, we'll bring it back.
Mostly breakfast is not hot. It's like cereal.
Thank you. It's been a long time since I had breakfast in an elementary school.
Cereal, yogurts.
Gotcha. That's helpful.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if we were making pancakes and eggs.
We're not going to right off the bat. I think with these numbers,
Right.
everything we're going to go basic.
I understand. I just always think, if there's a need, obviously we have long lines in our food pantry, and I would hate to see us wasting any food if we have it available to someone that would need it. Thank you.
Okay. Township and Borough Liaison, Mr. Mel.
Dr. Hearing, I have nothing to report.
Thank you. Election of PSBA officers, Dr. Hemberger.
Thanks, Dr. Herring. Let me get my, it's recommended that the Board of School Directors vote for the candidates who are running for PSBA offices for 2022, and those candidates are listed in the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Next is for public comments. Would anyone from the public like to be heard at this point? No? Would anybody on the board like to be heard at this point?
Have we heard anything back from our appraisers on the plot of land across the way?
That's the property sale. Yeah. We have an appraiser that is putting a quote together for us.
Would
Yeah,
we
but
be able,
he's been working on it for 2 months.
No, he hasn't.
Well, then we didn't let the contract.
would we be able to have that presented to the board in the next Cal meeting? Do you think we'll be ready by then?
He's only putting together a proposal for services at this point. So he's going to charge us. Now, it's the appraiser that we always use for our tax appeals.
Okay.
But I haven't, in fact, he was supposed to give it to me last week. So I don't know. And I did have a conversation with him, and I can tell you, he said it's an interesting requested project because there's a lot of details that he needs to figure out how to create a good price, or whether the building was going to be raised, what we were going to do with it in the meantime, what are the zoning restrictions, et cetera, so he could create a best.
Is there a building on that property?
No.
No.
I thought there
Oh,
was.
okay.
Okay.
I was going to say that's news to me. I hope there's not.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I have to say it's like everything else. These guys have too much work.
Sure. No, I would just ask if we can get it before the next Cal meeting, that would be great. But obviously, we're pending them what their result is.
Just wanted to say I've attended several. I couldn't get to all of them, but several of the Meet the Teacher nights over the last several weeks, and it's been great and refreshing and fun to go into those buildings and see a great energy, not only with our staff, no matter who it was, custodial, food services, teachers and aides and administrators, but also our families and the kids. It was very refreshing to go into the schools and see smiling faces and good vibes. So thanks for everything that everybody's doing out there.
There's no truth to the fact that rumor that the teachers wanted to withdraw by diploma, and it's getting to be less of them around anymore.
Anyone else? Okay.
I have a comment about Bob's diploma. I can wait until afterward.
Next board meeting will be our committee of a whole on Wednesday, October 5th at 6 o'clock. Hearing no objections, we will adjourn.